This is Jesse Hensley.
This is Josh Turner.
And this is Chris Bow.
Welcome to Turn Down for What?
Welcome back to Turn Down for What?
One day we'll be back in the office or the studio.
Somebody commented on that. On one of the pages, somebody commented, like, is that the office? I was like, yep. Actually, it was the producer. He was, I sent him the video clip, and he was like, wait, is Jesse in Scranton, Pennsylvania? I was like, yes, he is.
With Stanley beside me.
Yeah. For our audio listeners, Jesse has a nice little backdrop to his Zoom call that is, in fact, the office.
Why do you CC me when it has nothing to do with me?
Love the office, though. That's like all-time favorite classic show.
Speaking of things that is show related, NVIDIA
49ers.
Oh,
no, okay, sorry.
49ers killing me. That's all right. The game didn't really matter, but you still like to go away with a victory.
I know. And yeah, honestly, I didn't watch it, didn't care to, because I was like, it's just one of those useless games, just like I didn't watch the Ravens games, and half the other teams, like the Cleveland Browns, didn't start their, like it's like those teams that just don't play, just not worth watching on this week specifically. But that's one of those things that, they've clinched their number one seed. They deserve to rest week, and even though the game's an L on the playoffs.
Yeah, Coach was in a good mood post game for the press conference. We usually have Coach come out.
Seed. Like you can't be
mad. Yeah. He wasn't. He was joking around a bit, and it was good. It was.
You go get Dicker, the kicker.
Yeah, the kicker. The teams they all support him though, man. They all say, look, he's been there for us. He's been getting it done. He's the guy that we trust, and so. So yeah, that's the nature of this locker room, is they all support each other, and same thing. They have Purdy's back, and they all they feel good for each other when they accomplish things, and they sacrifice for each other. So that's a whole lot of fun. And the only thing strange was just that you had so many starters out. So post game you had Shanahan came out and talked a bit, and then you had Sam Darnold came out, and that was it. Like normally I'm there for an hour and a half post game with press conference stuff, and this one. It was done and wrapped up in 45 minutes, and I was like, "Oh man, cool! I can leave early. This is great." Yeah. So
the one useless game, and now next week you actually get to enjoy football and not.
Yes. Yeah, looking forward to that.
Hey, if the 49ers advance far into the playoffs, I'm gonna have to figure out how to fly out there and watch a game with you.
Oh man, they were telling us that tickets were going for $800 for upper deck for the first round of the playoffs. I mean, goodness, that's
Well, if they go Super Bowl, then me and you and Jesse are all going to meet up.
Go to Vegas.
Yeah, we're all going to the Super Bowl together.
Yeah, Vegas time.
That's a bad idea.
That sounds like a terrible. The Hangover Part 4.
Yeah,
that's great.
Speaking of things that has nothing to do with what we're talking about,
let's talk EVs for the day.
Yeah, right. So first thing, let's go ahead and talk about Honda. So it looks like Honda is considering a $14 billion investment into EV production in Canada, or those around the mountains, Canada. Yeah, that's a good thing. So I'm not seeing a lot from Toyota and Honda when it comes to their announcements for EVs. So anytime they look at something like this, especially that large of an investment, which is nearly 2 trillion yen, that's a lot of money to be pumping into a facility. And it could also include their in-house battery production, which I think is always a good thing, because I think that's the advantage of Tesla over other companies. But I say that, and there was a recent, I don't have the specifics on it, but if you Google it or YouTube it, real world 70-mile-an-hour trip for the Cybertruck, turned out that the vehicle went 256 miles at 70 miles an hour full time from full to empty. So about the same as our trucks, honestly. I mean, that's what I get in my F-150 when I'm driving around at 70, 75 mile an hour. So, yeah, I don't know what you all think, but
we've seen 260, 270. Now, that does detach us from a Honda conversation, which I want to come back to. But, I mean, in our trucks, I mean, I've pretty much estimate 260, 270. 130 kilowatt battery, easy math, 2 kilowatts, on average. If I'm going that fast, it's 2 to 2.1 roughly. And so, I mean, I'm seeing 260.
I'm 1.7, 1.8.
But it's interesting.
You're not going 70 though, I'm guessing, Jesse. You're
close. It's close to it.
He abides by all the recognized speed limits.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, for me, I could say, I mean, most of the times when I'm driving, on these trips to Nashville and north and stuff, I mean, I'm going 5 to 7. I would say pretty consistently 7 to 8 over. So 77 ish, right around there the whole time. And I'm getting 2 to 2.1 efficiency. And so easy math for that is 260, 270. But obviously, you're not draining your battery to zero. So realistically, you're stopping every 250 miles. But if I took it from 100% to zero, I should, in theory, effectively see right at that 260 figure. But for the Cybertruck to have a higher advertised range, Jesse, are you aware of if it was the Cyber Beast or if it was the all-wheel?
I think it was all-wheel. Yeah.
Because the Cyber Beast has the exact same advertised range, which would make sense.
Has less range.
The all-wheel has the all-wheel has the higher range. The Cyber Beast has the same range as the Lightning. And so
okay, yeah.
So with the all-wheel, I would expect it to potentially get closer to 300, but obviously if the other ones produce the exact same, I would imagine that it would be roughly the same numbers since they advertised 320 for that specific model.
And the other thing is that it has the all-terrain tires right now. They're not doing the all-season, so that the all-terrains are also going to take a little chunk out of your miles.
It's pretty interesting though to see the efficiency difference. I mean, even amongst gas-powered vehicles, my buddy who had that we've talked about before that had the hybrid F-150, he was getting 23 with his former tires, and he got in a wreck and had to get basically it popped one of his tires, and so like he had to go get a new set all around because they didn't make the same tire. So he got more all-terrain style tires, and his effectiveness went down, efficiency went down to like 20 to 21 best case scenario. So he lost like 3 or 4 miles to the gallon just by using a different tire. So I mean, it's interesting to see how that plays a factor, but the aerodynamics of wheels and the weight of wheels and stuff all really matter when it comes to the EV space.
Yeah, I think the big thing
physics lesson from Josh today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Right. Yeah, I think when they ran the Aero, the Rivian was the best, and then followed by the Cybertruck, and then the Lightning. But then so much factors into it, right? The tires are going to matter. The temperature where you're driving is going to matter. The elevation is going to matter. Yeah. All of those things kind of factor in there. What you really find at the end of the day is that they're in that same ballpark, give or take, depending on conditions. And I think the big difference is that battery density for that energy is relatively low compared to what you get from gasoline. Gasoline, you throw in a 30-gallon tank and you can go 400 miles because the energy density, even though the efficiency is not great of what you're getting out of that energy, the density of it is so well contained in fuel and with diesel, gas, whatever you want to do with it. It's and that's where you're losing it with EVs, is that even though they all have the same kind of impacts, and then combustion really helps you because you're using the heat off the engine for your heat. I was waking up for the 49er game. We had the very rare 29-degree morning, and I preconditioned the truck, and I didn't have it plugged in, so it was running off the battery, and I got like a 1.9 miles per kilowatt driving to the stadium that morning because I had some heat on and defrost, not the whole time, had the seat warmers on and that stuff. And that heat just, man, it kills it. And then I had some friends message me, mocking me with pictures of real snow and real cold. So caveat for the West Coast, California, 29 degrees is cold. But if you're living with that every day, I mean, I see how your range is taking a beating. And then if you have all-terrain tires, your range is taking a beating.
Our nights here in East Tennessee have gotten cold, and I park outside, and it's one of those things that with my vehicle, I'm now the estimated range, which is all over the place, but I'm daily seeing my estimated range have dropped 25% pretty much.
Yep.
When it comes to that, just because the battery's starting cold. And I think with preconditioning and stuff, it helps. But one issue I've had recently with my truck is, I took it to the shop and they did an update, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago, and it messed up with the charge port. They replaced it. It was this whole to do, but the preconditioning is still not working. And I don't know if it's an issue. It charges fine. Like I plug it in and it charges, but every morning when I have the scheduled preconditioning, it faults. And I don't know if it's the charger or if it's the truck or what's the discrepancy. But I can't get that, pre-warming of the battery or the vehicle. I don't know exactly what all they do in the preconditioning, but I do know it warms the vehicle and, defrosts my car, which is nice. But in that, I don't have that ability right now because that specific function is not working with the scheduling, because every morning at 7 a.m. before I take my kids to school, it faults. I can manually start it and it's fine, but when it comes to preconditioning the batteries, those things can help. But I'm seeing on average when I'm charging up that I'm getting at best that diminished range of about, I'd say about 25%. It's about 250 to 270 full charge. So.
Yeah, there's just not a whole lot you can do. I feel bad because you probably have to bring it by the dealer and have them try to figure it out. And then I
emailed them as a follow-up to what they had done, and they said, well, we'll have to bring it back in, take a look at it.
Yeah.
Like, wait, to get another rental car that I can hopefully not lose the keys to. But that's a side fact.
I've got to bring mine back for a couple. The door panels have some clips missing apparently, and I'm dreading. I just don't want to bring it back, but so yeah, those are never fun, man. It's the pains of these early EVs, I guess, that we're getting. There's that's part of it.
And all things considered, that could have a lot bigger issues than my truck not warming itself up in the morning. And it doesn't really matter unless I'm going to take a road trip in it. And then obviously I would want it nice and warm and full at the beginning of the day. But that's one of those things that for me around town, it's not an inconvenience to my life, but that's something that I still want to be addressed, because that's just a functionality issue that I had last year. It was working just fine, but this year it's not wanting to operate like it should. So that will hopefully be addressed, but nonetheless, that's something that with the cold, with the range, it obviously affects it. But I still use my vehicle exactly as I would desire to do, just because I don't drive enough in the day to where that efficiency difference, it's worth having the heated seats and enjoy those amenities, as long as I'm not going on a road trip. And then you might start looking at scaling that stuff back. But all things considered, that type of stuff doesn't make enough of a difference unless you're just cranking out hot heat, blast, and usually you'll use a decent chunk of heat to get your vehicle up to temp, but then to maintain it at that temperature, it's not tremendous bad. If you look at they have a function in the Lightning, at least, where you can see the power distribution, what goes to what. It's usually 5% for temperature control. It's all driving. Taking a 7,000-pound truck 75 miles an hour down the interstate is a lot more energy consumption than running a little heater. So all things considered, that's just one of those things that obviously you have to keep an eye on. But it is what it is. So,
and it's really well sealed. Once you get the cabin warmed up, you don't need to leave the heat on. Once you get it up to temp. So, I mean, even the drive to Santa Clara is like the longest drive I'll do for the next couple weeks. Everything else for me is local, same 4 cities. So even with the drive to Santa Clara and back, and then to work today, I'm still sitting at 60% state of charge, and I probably won't plug it back in until Wednesday or something. I'll let it get down to the 30s before I plug it back in. And so it just depends on how you use it. But with when you're doing those long range testing, that's where people freak out, because day to day, it really doesn't matter. Who cares? But then, so those trips where you're going for hours, and those little things start to matter. The type of tires you're using, the temperature that it is, the elevation, the wind. It was one of the cool things that I downloaded after watching the Out of Spec thing, is they use that wind app called Windy, and you can actually see the headwinds and see what happens there. Was that what you were watching, Jesse? Was the Out of Spec, or was it a different one?
You're muted.
You're on mute. Yeah.
I think it was a different one, but
okay.
I have watched what you're talking about there. So yeah,
I've seen
similar results.
Range tests. They're even with gas powered vehicles, I've seen a lot of them range testing. They're tracking winds to report the accuracy of that, but then they're also looking at temperatures, the fuel, the tip top, and I mean, like they're doing all those variables. But wind is one that obviously you can see. But if you're doing a a circuit there and back, usually you can get fair results because you get there, but get the supplement on the way back. But that's one that, obviously plays a factor. But yeah, I mean, I think with range, it's something that with a Tesla announcement, or the not that announcement, but the revelations coming out from the people actually testing these Cybertrucks, it just shows that, I mean, like every other EV, factors matter, and you don't know what those people were encountering to get that level of efficiency. But that's something that nonetheless, it's to be expected that you're going to lose range when you're driving fast down the interstate, and around town you're going to get better. I need to study that up more and see what the model and stuff was of that vehicle specifically they tested. But I'd imagine even with the extended range being only 20 miles more, best case scenario, you get like 280 to 300 highway out of a 350-mile advertised range, because similar to gas mileage, if you're not aware as the listener, when they do estimated ranges, they're factoring in less range on the highway and more range around town. And so your EPA rated range of 320 for a Ford Lightning means that you're going to get, it's on the window sticker, but I think it's like 350 around town and 280 on the highway, but the average equals out to be the 280. It's flip-flop when you're dealing with gas-powered vehicles to get your EPA range, but that's something that, like my wife's minivan that she drives is 24 on the highway, and then it's like 19 or whatever, but it equals out to 21 mpgs. So it's the same with EVs, but flip-flopped, where highway range is less efficient and because battery consumption. But that's something that with those type of vehicles, you're going to get less range than the advertised limit when it comes to highway speeds, especially 70 plus, just because you're maintaining high speed on a vehicle and you don't get the regeneration of slowing down as much. And so it's definitely something that with EVs, don't ever expect a 320 vehicle to get 320. It's always going to be probably 25% less than that when you're dealing with high speeds.
Yeah, I think when I was watching it, the big takeaways for me, and he's going to do a video where he does the Rivian, the Lightning, and the Cybertruck all compared to each other, kind of back to back, and that's going to be really fun to watch. But it really just reinforced the idea of drive what you love, as far as I'm concerned, because they're such different trucks. I mean, the Rivian is a smaller kind of mid-sized truck, and they did, the test. They had a Rivian that they did a test with, along with the dual motor Cybertruck, and clearly the Rivian was the better kind of cornering, going through canyons, and just the feel as it was doing some turns. That was clearly the more sporty, fun truck to drive. And then they made multiple comments about how the Lightning was clearly a quieter, smoother ride than either the Rivian or the Cybertruck. And then, but then you've got the Cybertruck is sitting on all-terrain 35-inch tires. I'm on 20-inch all seasons, but I can, I regularly get 220 miles out of my short range at 70 miles an hour. Going from my Bay Area, where I live, up to Sacramento and back is about 220. And that's right about what I get. I get home sitting at around 3 or 4% state of charge when I get home. And I get 220, but again, I'm on 20-inch wheels, not 30s, 35s. I'm on all seasons. I'm in California with moderate weather. All these. So what is it for your lifestyle? What is it you're doing with it? What do you need to use it for? What do you enjoy? If I'm parking in the middle of San Francisco on a regular basis and going down canyon roads back to my house, I think the Rivian's the one I go with. If for my use case, the Lightning is what I go with. And there's going to be a ton of people that enjoy the heck out of taking that Cybertruck out to the dunes, or just driving that thing down the highway, and it's going to be the best feeling truck they've ever driven if they've come in from gas. And then there's someone that's going to be needing to tow long distance and heavy loads, and they're going to need to stick with diesel. An F-250, a Silverado 2500, they're going to need to stick with what they're doing. People that have dualies, this isn't for that. And one day it'll get there, but not today. So it just reinforces the idea to me of, what are you going to use it for? What do you love? When you sit inside of it, what feels right? Test drive them all. And don't get into the hype of it's this or it's got to be that, because they're all going to have benefits. They're all going to have detriments. I like my Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I like that I've got a spare tire. I like the frunk. somebody else may have better value in that hard stainless steel, right? Hard freaking steel, to use the polite term, or whatever they're doing. I've seen lightnings that are used on ranches where that plastic front grill gets cracked because it hits a gate, and that aluminum body is going to dent the heck out of it, right? That those are going to be great use cases for the Cybertruck where you can beat on these things. And so it just, yeah, depends on what you're using it for. But I love watching the videos. I love understanding it and seeing them really push it to the limits. And so those things are a lot of fun to see. And I don't. I want to get one and get inside one, and experience it, right? I've seen it, been next to it, and I've never driven in it. That's whoever gets it first, man. If Jessie gets it, I need to get out there. I need to get a ride in it. There's Al with the Tesla Owners Club East Bay ordered his. I'm like, man, I got shotgun. I got, F the pump. Will's got his on order. I'm like, one of you people needs to take delivery, because I'm just chomping at the bit to get inside one.
They'll get theirs before
sure
I get mine,
fine.
because the two will come in before the other ones. And what you're talking about there, Chris, also reminded me of a meme that I shared. It showed a picture of three vehicles: the Cybertruck, the Rivian, and the F-150. And over the Rivian, it says, "Come take a hike with me." Over the Ford, it's "Come work with me," because obviously a work truck. And then for the Cybertruck, it says, "Come with me if you want to live." And that does give a good understanding of how each one of those trucks are going to have their own brand.
If you want to fingerprints all over your vehicle and everything else, just go with a Cybertruck. But if you want a truck that actually works, then go for the Lightning.
But hey man, I've got the all black Lightning. I'm telling you, every fingerprint will show on my all black Lightning. I promise you, it absolutely. My kids, I'll wash the truck, and then I'll be like, oh, the kids are gonna get it. I'm gonna have fingerprints everywhere. There was a ton of those floating around with the F, marry, kill, which one do you F, which one do you marry, which one do you kill, and just reading the comments, and my response back was like, oh man, reading the rationale and the comments some of you guys are making, most of which have never ridden or driven in any of the three, much less, right? And so reading some of them, it just tells me why the divorce rate is 50%. The judgment on who they would marry is the same judgment they probably put into, I'm like, hey man, the one that I married, the one that I love, it is low maintenance. It contributes to the family, does everything I want. It's fun. It's exciting. It supports me. And you know what? That's what I'm marrying. And if you want to marry a stripper, go for it, man.
But here's the brilliant question. F, marry, kill. Pick your three between Rivian, Lightning, and Cybertruck. Go.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into that. I think because it's gonna be a different. Like I know what I'm marrying the F-150. That's what I love. It works for me. It's practical. It reflects my life. But if my life was different, I would choose differently. I wouldn't kill any of them. I love them all.
Yeah.
But which one am I living with for my life? Which one's not Gucci and pretentious and gonna be wanting a bunch of expensive purses from me? Which one's practical? Like, it's my Lightning for me.
It is. Yeah. Because even if, I would love to try the rear wheel drive or the 400-mile range Rivian, just to see how that does. Does it get 400 miles in its range? It's supposed to be out next year, I believe, or this year, actually. From everything I see on a Rivian, it reminds me of one of my favorite trucks. I do like the Toyota Tacomas that are out there. I think Toyota Tacoma is a really good truck, other than a few things, but so it reminds me, it has a very unique nose to it with those headlights, so I do see the use of that truck.
What it reminds me of? Ford Ranger.
Yep. Yeah, I know that truck. But the other part about it is the utilitarian part about it. I mean, I like big frunks, and I cannot lie. Everybody, when you look at it, I use it a lot. I keep my tools in it. I keep my work gear in it.
And out of the three, the Lightning definitely by far and away has the best frunk.
Yeah, and I will say that the expectations that I had for the Tesla Cybertruck were not met based on what the original parameters that were set by Tesla when they announced it originally. I think everybody has beat that dead horse to death. But what it also shows us how great the Ford is, because now when you compare the two-wheel drive or the two motor to the Ford, extended range. And you look at their numbers, really the Ford outdoes it in a lot of different areas. And that's a good thing. That's something that I think is good for competition. It also means that now people that may have been holding out on the Ford, and now when you look at the price of the Cybertruck, you're like, well, maybe Ford is, the better way to go here. So they've been holding out to get it. And I think the numbers show that as well. And I think Ford's done a good job in expanding what they offer. So I'm excited to see what the T3 turns out being. Now you've got Ford that's been in the market for 2 years when their next vehicle comes out. And I still don't even see on the horizon the Chevy. Nothing against Chevy. They make great vehicles too, I'm sure. But they've only made just a handful of thousands of the GMC Hummer. So that's not a lot of experience to know what the problems are and seeing where the headaches on the distribution of these battery systems are. And once you get Ford making their own batteries, just like Toyota is, just like Tesla are at this time, it's really going to help build that market. Even though GM has their own plant and it's also in Tennessee for their batteries, which is a great thing. They're not making that push and Ford is. And I really do think that if you don't get into the market, at least in some way, you're going to be left behind, because look how hard it is to catch up to Tesla right now. Imagine if just them and Ford are the two doing this, and then you bring in BYE, which I'm sure will come into the United States market soon, or BYD.
Yeah.
So, and again, I would love to see one of their vehicles just to compare what it is. So if you're out there, let's see if we can get one of those in here and try it out.
I think for GM, it's ultimately up to the partnerships they draft. Get what I did there?
No, I saw what you did there.
Going back to the original conversation that you had before you rabbit trailed hard into your Cybertruck was the Honda announcement of their investments into EVs. In October of last year, they had there was the potential for them to be doing some partnership with GM to develop EVs, because they were trying to go in potentially together to try to rival Tesla, and they scrapped that plan in October.
GM did or Honda did? Was that GM pulled out or Honda pulled out?
I honestly don't know who instigated the pullout there. But then, in going back a year and a half ago, Honda.
Somebody has a good pullout game.
Welcome back, Jesse.
But Honda had partnered with LG in 22, announcing the Ohio site that they're developing, the $4.4 billion site for batteries. So they've already made that investment in Ohio that's in production. And I know that their target is 2026 to get Honda EVs on the road. And so, obviously they're a little bit farther out, but it looks like they're putting in the infrastructure investment. I guess my biggest question in regards to that original topic was, why Canada for manufacturing? What is the strategic benefit to sticking it to Canada? No offense to all of our Canadian listeners who are actually weekly tuning into
import rates into United States.
It's cheaper than China. Some of the other places is very likely, if I was to imagine. But it's interesting that for a vehicle that would probably be mostly sold in the United States, that you'd end up producing that in Canada.
No, it's import rates. That's they can send it. Canada's import from Japan for raw materials, motors, batteries, what have you. I'm sure the rate to ship there versus the United States is.
I'm not a multi-billion-dollar company, so I don't know obviously the rationale behind that. But
it's kind of like where you make a lot of product down in Mexico as well. Why can't we make them here? Well, it's cheaper. It's definitely a dollars and cents thing. Even though the labor force, I'm sure, is going to be more expensive there. I believe it is an import thing into the United States that makes that more attractive deal.
Because obviously those imports and tariffs coming from their outside investments obviously is large, but they don't have to
there's a lot of
they don't have to deal with as much shipping headache bringing stuff overseas as they would from Mexico and Canada for a United States car market. And I'm sure they'll still probably sell those up in Canada too. I don't know exactly
Canada.
But my best guess is, that's going to be a target vehicle for the United States when released. But 14 billion's that's a big investment into the future of the industry. Ford built their entire Blue Oval network on a $5 billion plant. outside of obviously the plant they already have in Dearborn. But that's something that $5 billion has built the whole Blue Oval thing. So a $14 billion facility is going to be a heck of an operation for the future of their EV game.
I think so too. Yeah.
That whole supply chain thing is interesting because I can remember, small tangent, back near the turn of the century, just after
Back in
for
my
me.
day.
Back in my day, I had bought it was actually 2020 or 2002, I believe it was, 35th anniversary Camaro, and I was all like excited about this nice 35th anniversary edition Camaro that had the LS1 Corvette engine in it. It was all specced out, right? And like American muscle car, right? And it turns out it's made in Canada. And a buddy of mine's like, hey, my Honda is more American than your Camaro is. And turns out he was right. And then you start digging into it, and the F-150, for example, is assembled in America, but the majority of the parts come from elsewhere. And it gets really complicated in that way. Like, where are these people logistically putting things?
Yeah.
Credit to Tesla. Like, top to bottom, the most American made car is Tesla.
Is Tesla. Yep.
Yep. And
Did you
it's
have the white racing stripes that went into the checkered flags on that 35, or did you have the black
yeah.
ones?
No,
The
I
white
had,
ones?
yeah, it was
I
a
remember those.
great car. The only reason I got rid of it is because, again, in most of my driving then and as it is now is commute traffic, driving around city, and just that constant. It's a 6-speed transmission, first gear,
Yeah.
second gear, third gear, back to first gear, and you just get, especially in rush hour traffic, man. That is not an enjoyable drive. It was fun to drive on the weekends, fun to drive on a trip down to Santa Cruz or something, right? But day to day, it was not fun to drive. It was a great car. But yeah, then I ended up getting out of that and into a F-150. That was my first F-150, was out of that. I had a Ranger before it, then the Camaro, then an F-150. And I was like, I had to get back into a truck. And
You look like a Ranger guy.
that's my first truck was a Ranger. Yeah, yeah. And the Ranger is and that's a great platform, man. I think it's kind of to your point with T3, it's an interesting Rivian has a moment now where they're the only kind of mid-sized vehicle. But if Ford comes out with a Ranger or a Maverick,
The Maverick would be impressive. I mean,
right?
especially with how great the hybrid Maverick is and how many they sold of that truck. I mean,
Huge
it's the
market for
size
that.
that a lot of people want. And if you can pack in 300-mile range to that Maverick and keep the price under $40,000 with all-wheel drive,
Yeah.
what else better would there be? It just
Yeah.
that's a lot of things to
It'd
try
be the
to
number one selling truck in the United States, probably.
Yeah, but I mean, you could take the Mustangs or the Mach-E's. It's hard to call that a Mustang in my, still for me, but the Mach-E, I can say. If you take that same platform and put it underneath the Maverick, it looks like it would fit. So, then what do you have? I think
It's
that would be one of
possible.
the best looking or the best marketable trucks for the cost, especially with 4 seats. And I mean,
And
a lot of good things.
as we've discussed, economy of scale, if they can start mass producing these things with Blue Oval
Yes.
and getting it, then all the manufacturers doing that mass production will do it. But as Ford grows their game, they can lower costs, just like Tesla did with bringing stuff in-house based on use case, but also utilizing, new technologies and things to simplify. But I think that as battery production and stuff ramps up, and as those raw material costs come down, that we'll see, the ability to get those type of vehicles for more affordable. But a smaller truck, I mean, like you said, I mean, I don't. In my opinion, the Rivian is the Ranger sized truck. For me, as a
It
big
is.
dude, I can tell the difference between being in a Lightning or a full size truck compared to the Rivian. But the Rivian has a tremendous use case. If you're not a large person like myself, that can be a really good option. I mean, it's fast. It has better efficiency as far as range goes on the long range, and even the regular has, I think, slightly better range. But it's one of those things that it's a very good, viable, sharp looking, fast charging truck. But like you were talking about, it's different use cases. But the thing is, getting in more vehicles into that space of, like the Cadillac Escalade being the first full size SUV, it's the same thing with the trucks. You need to get the smaller ones because those will be wildly popular if they can manage to produce those on a larger scale and have them at an effective price range. Because not everybody can afford an $80,000 brand new truck, but if you had a $40,000 Maverick, just like the Maverick gained all the traction when they released it, just the regular gas powered hybrid ones that they have, because the starting price on that was like $23,000. Right. And so that's super wild. They tried, you can get the top end trim model for like 35. And so if you can spend 40 grand and get a top end trim model of an EV, get your tax credit, and you're at $32,000 all in, that's going to be a widely appealing truck to the average consumer.
I'm going to call mine Goose.
It's a Maverick.
Yeah, it'd be my Maverick named Goose. I'll get both of them.
You know who's making a truck, testing it right now is Kia. Kia has a truck in Korea.
I saw that design,
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, if they electrify that thing, and they've done a great job with their stuff, and the Rivian is very much that kind of premium truck feel and brand, and it's gonna remain so. But there's a limited market for that at some point, and I think they're running up against that to some degree, and I think that's part of Lucid's deal too, right? Is that there is a premium brand market, and then if you can get out there and start to produce things like Kia is producing. I told you guys about seeing the EV9 over the weekend. I'm telling you, man, that EV9 looked sharp. It had 3 rows. It had room in the 3 rows. It's very much. It's almost like Kia is looking at what Rivian does and says, "That's cool. Now I'm going to do it for a blue collar person, and I'm going to do it better." Right? Because they took, you have the R1T and the R1S, and Rivian's now testing a truck, and that EV9 is very similar to the R1S, but bigger, and it felt more put together. It looked really nice, and
it was a very good job at improving their technology game and some of the amenities and features. I mean, I think we had this discussion before, but I mean, you can get a lot of bang for your buck in a Kia. You can get
Hyundai
leather, and you can get the heads-up display, and you can get all those features that you find in a $90,000 vehicle for a $45,000 price tag, and that's why it's a wide, the Telluride and the Kia Carnival and those vehicles they can't get them off the trucks because they're selling so quickly. Just because I think that their features and amenities and things where they've taken their game on a gas powered front, even with their EV6 and EV9, I mean, you're seeing those be actually top selling in the EV market, because I think that you're seeing a product that matches what they've done with their revamp efforts.
This EV9, it had 300 miles of range. It had the 3 rows with nice room. It was 61,600 for
that's a good deal.
I mean, it is not an Escalade,
top of the line is 80. So, but still 60. We had a Telluride, and the Telluride I think was 55 for ours, top of the line, and love it. I mean, it was a great vehicle. Still have it. Great vehicle for what we have, and But on that note, I'm going to leave you all to talk about me behind my back. We didn't have time for hydrogen. Let's do that next week. And I appreciate you all, and I will see you all next week.
Good having you back, Jesse.
Yep. See you all later.
But to finish the conversation that we were having about range and some of the things there, I was going to talk about to finalize up, I guess, today, since we're already 45 minutes deep. The range, basically the EPA changed their dictations on range calculation, and so Tesla came out, and there was all the chitter chatter about it, but Tesla came out and they talked about they updated their range on several things, and I'll kind of just quickly go through the list and we can kind of talk about it. But the Model S long range, the 19-inch wheel range stayed at 405 miles. The 21-inch wheels went from 375 miles, actually increased to 382 miles. It's one of the few ones that increased, but it actually improved in range by 7 miles. The Plaid Model S 19-inch wheels went from 396 to 359, so it lost like 40 miles of range. The Plaid Model S 21 wheels went from 348 to 320. Model X long range, 20 wheels, 348 to 338, 22-inch wheels from 330 to 322, about an 8 to 15 mile loss. The Plaid Model X went from 333 to 326, 311 to 300 on the 20 and 22-inch wheels. And then the Model Y, which is your most popular seller, 19-inch wheels, rear wheel drive only, stayed at 260. The 20-inch wheels stayed at 242, so that was unaffected. The long range went from 330 to 310 and from 318 to 392 on the 19 and 20-inch rims. And then obviously the performance went from the 303 to 285. A lot of numbers spewing out there just now. But basically, the summation is across the board, especially with the Model Y, you saw a pretty interesting drop when it came to not significant, but with the EPA ratings, there was a couple of them that increased, several of them that stayed the same. But in the Model Y specifically, rear wheel stayed the same. And for the long range, you saw about a 15 to 20 mile drop with those product offerings.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think everybody that owns Teslas knows that those ranges aren't really true to life. And we in the Ford world, we always get joke about the guessometer, and there's so many factors that go into that. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's cultures of these companies, but Tesla and Ford tend to kind of overestimate or overstate and real world situations. And then you've got kind of Kia seems to be kind of in the ballpark more or less of where it actually is. And then the German companies, for some reason, again, I don't know if it's culture or what that is, but the Audi, the BMWs, those guys tend to undersell their range, which is interesting because you go out there and you actually take like an e-tron or a BMW iX, and they actually outperform a lot of the times what their EPA shows. So I don't know if that's a company culture thing or what that is, but I just think that really brought in alignment, better representation of what the Teslas are in the real world are doing.
Yeah, which just means your Model Y long range is now 310 and 292 for your two different wheelbases. But that's something that, 330 to 310, that does play a decent factor into, obviously comparing it to other models and things. But, across the board, it's not gigantic. And it's like you said, it's just more of a realistic picture of what you'll actually end up getting compared to the current, vehicle space that's out there and what you actually get in real world. But with those testing parameter changes, there was those updates for that specifically. So
yeah, and I think the interesting thing for a new consumer, right? For us, we love this stuff. We geek out on it. We're on different EV groups and watching videos, and so we have a good understanding of this stuff. But if you go to my mom and my mom wants to buy an EV, it's she's not thinking about all this stuff, and heat pump or not heat pump and range and how she just wants to get in the thing and drive. And it had some interesting posts going this morning on X, and I was just kind of saying, look, to me the ultimate car would be like a Model Y long range with an LFP battery, because then you're getting your longer range. But they don't do that. I think all of Tesla's LFP stuff is your rear wheel drive short range. Ford is supposed to be with the Mach-E, and the Lightning going to be going to LFP for their short range. And I'm sure there's somebody that knows way more than I do that can explain why that would be. I know you're going to get more power out of the ones that are the traditional chemistry compared to LFP, but man, there's something to be said for just getting in your car. You charge it to 100. If I'm charging to 80 or 90 and my short range, and I'm always ending up at 210, 220 versus if I had an LFP and I just did 100% all the time, which one's easier? Which one am I better off? It
makes user experience easier. When I got my Lightning and brought it home, I knew from my research and things that I was supposed to do that, but unless you read the manual, they didn't tell me at the dealership that I should stick at 90. And so, for the protection of my battery, I did that. And slow charging is a little bit better, but that's one of those things that logistically people aren't really educated on, those things, unless you are, more of a nerd or more researched in the EV space, like me. But that's something that logistically, if you could make a simple setup to where you can charge your vehicle. You can plug it in without having to go into your phone and program it to charge less than like you said, your average person that's just going to go buy one and take it home and plug it up. Like they don't have to sit there and have an owner's manual figuring out how to best protect the 300K lifespan of the vehicle or beyond. Whereas, with those type of battery tech, you can do that. Or like some dealerships are doing, including Ford, they put a buffer in of the battery pack size to maybe just naturally cause that buffer. But it just makes sense to make an offering that doesn't require a ton of programming and stuff unless that was already preset and you had to override it kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I plan to keep my Lightning for 7-8 years, all the way until the battery warranty is, and then I'm probably gonna not want to be risking that. We'll see what battery tech looks like, but I'm pretty good about, I charge it to 90%, and then I rarely go to 100, and I let it get all the way down into the 30s. They say for storing it, having it in the 50s somewhere is a good place if you're gonna having it sit for somewhere for a long time, a week or so. I got some
owner's manual on how to maintain your battery. No, so just kind of
right.
The batteries, chemistry and how to best maintain that chemistry. And if you don't know that, you're going to end up potentially degrading your battery life quicker than you should. And that's what, one, we can maybe have a segment where we can talk about the different battery styles and kind of some of the good habits to have with it if, our listeners don't know. But that's something that there's so many different things that people say about the battery life that you're not aware of. Fast charge, you don't you can get to 80, but you can go to 90, but you really don't want to, because the more you fast charge it, the worse it is. Leaving it full charge, what does that do to a battery? Even if you slow trickle to 100 and leave it at 100, how does that damage your battery? Hot, cold, how does that affect it? I mean, there's so many variables compared to a gas engine, which is a little bit more reliable on that front. But with battery, if you know how to baby your battery, you can have a really good, long-lasting, battery product. But if you don't, and you do some specific things, it may, end up causing issues sooner.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see in 5 years what these things all wash out to be, and as things change. And I got some grief. We were talking about bringing our trucks into the dealer, and I know yours was there for probably a week and a half, and I think mine was in for a week and a half. And my dealer, God bless them, they plugged it in and charged it to 100, or they were going to charge it to 100, and I saw it on the app, and I was like, "Oh no, what are you guys doing?" And I stopped it. I made it stop before it. I didn't want it to get past 90.
They're trying to do you a service by sending you home with a full tank of gas, but it's like, don't do that.
yeah. And if they had done it the night before or the day before or whatever, that wouldn't have worried me. But they were doing it at the beginning, and it was going to sit there for a week and a half at 100%. And I'm like, is that going to kill the truck? No, but I want to have that happen as few a time as possible. And so it's I got grief for that when I posted about that. I was like, oh, I'm glad I can remotely stop this. And everybody's like, oh, God forbid they try to give you free energy. And a lot of people, they charge it to 100% every day. And God bless them,
protect the battery, save the 45 cents that they put into my truck, and then end up actually saving the battery that costs $30,000. So,
but you hear so many things, man. It's there's a study out not too long ago where it said supercharging didn't really do anything negative to it. In fact, there was some, and every battery pack is different, right? But in terms of how is it a pouch, is it cell, how the thermal dynamics work in terms of how each company manages the heat. But there was some thought out there with a Tesla, for example. It's actually better to do some DC fast charging because it heats up the battery and takes moisture content and evaporates it. And so there's a lot of different things out there, and I don't know nearly enough. I'd love to get a battery engineer that can explain some of this stuff, And
we had somebody on the podcast 2 months ago that did some paper writing and stuff. But I mean, I want to see some people that actually do battery engineering that can tell us the best health practices. We can try to find that. But it's true. I mean, there's so many different things as with every different battery type, responds differently. But that's where, with that being the case, like you said, if you charge your vehicle to 100% every single day, it's okay. I mean, it's not like if you've done
a lot of people do it.
If you do that for the past year, your car's not going to die next year, likely.
Right.
But it's one of those things that, over the lifetime of the battery, you could save. It's like eating healthy. It's the, you could live the long, happy lifespan by drinking a Coke 4 times a day and smoking a pack of cigarettes. But at the same time, do the healthy things and you give yourself a better chance at living a long lifespan. And so you can basically charge your battery to 100%. But that's something that, like there's just common health practices that for the battery's sake that could give you the ability to see 500,000 mile range, assuming your body lasts that long. You can get a 500, from what I've seen, you could see a 500,000 range and potentially only see 20% maybe total degradation over that time frame, which my truck battery would then turn into your truck battery after $500,000 mile range, which isn't a dig at your truck battery. But my point is, like, it's not that big of a difference. It's just an adaptation of expectation if you maintain your battery well enough. And so just for general health, if you don't do every characteristic correctly, it's okay. But it's one of those things that in general, if you know those things and you can accommodate, hey, wonderful. Because some people have to. Hey, let's say I leave and I have to drive, a 300-mile commute every day to get to work. Not that people do that, but some people do. Then yes, you have to charge 100% every day, and that's okay. You're not going to die. The vehicle's not going to die next year. But it's one of those things that, if you have the ability to set it up in the app of your vehicle or in the vehicle to charge to 90% because you're just a around town commuter, that helps you out with the lifespan of your battery to protect it for the future of the longevity of it. And if you intend to keep it as long as it possibly will drive, it'll help you have the best results sooner. And that's Apple. I'm kind of going on a long tangent about batteries here, but Apple did the same thing with their iPhone. It was charging quickly. You saw those batteries die quickly, but they actually came out with tech when you plug your phone in, it gets you up to speed, but overnight it actually charges you real slowly all the way to the top, because every single day everybody charges up their iPhone to 100%. Everybody does, because why are they going to stop it? And I'm always at 0 by the end of the day. So everybody wants 100%. Yes, but they changed the way that they charged the batteries, and it protected the lifespan of the battery, or they say it does. But that's one of those things that it's charging habits that they programmed in that helps out, which is why you see charging curves in trucks and all EVs in general. There's charging curves because you don't want to charge 300 kilowatts delivered until 100% because that fries the battery. So.
And I think it's just another example of use case, right? Because in my situation, I'm kind of thinking ahead. If I'm worried about year 5, 6, and 7 and already having a short range battery, I want to keep every bit of that from degrading as possible. And maybe that's different if, to your point, if your commute is very long. If I'm going every single day from Sacramento to the Bay Area, or if I'm doing weekly drives from the Bay Area to Los Angeles, or Los Angeles to San Diego, or whatever that might look like for somebody. And if they're doing that and they want to use that full battery, then the other part of it is, in 6, 7 years from now, I'm not going to have hit 100,000 miles because I don't drive more than 9 or 10,000 miles a year. So I'm still going to be under my 100,000 mile warranty for my battery. I want to maintain what I can with it. But if I'm doing a lot of high mileage driving, 20, 30, if I'm Brandon Flash, if I'm Talik down there doing the ride sharing, if I've got a heavy use case and I'm going to be hitting my battery warranty over 100,000 anyway, maybe there's times, not implying that either of them, go to 100 by any means, but if my daily commute is like that and I'm putting 20,000+ miles on my vehicle every year, then maybe I know that in 3 or 4 years I'm going to get a new one anyway. So I'm not too concerned about that degradation. I just want to enjoy the car and drive the heck out of it. But for me, I'm trying to be more cautious with it.
And over the last year, I'd say I probably charged 100% once a week with the amount of traveling that I had to do for work. And that's something that, if you have to use it, you got to do it, and it's fine. It's one of those things that you do absolutely do it when you have to. But if you have the ability to have that habit of doing 90%, if you're just going to be around town, absolutely do it. But if you have to go somewhere, don't think twice or have any regrets about charging up to 100%, because you want to get the full 300 and whatever mile range that you're supposed to get out of the vehicle. And so if you're promised 250 and you want to get that range out of it, then absolutely charge up when you need it. But if you only need to drive 10 miles in the next day, just leave it at 90. There's no harm at all in doing that, and that just helps you out with but just setting yourself up for a long-term, lifespan of that vehicle. So
Yeah, if you listen to Kyle Connor, man, he charges his to 50%, and then he just charges it every day.
Yeah.
He's like, I charge it more often, but only charge it to 50 or 60 or whatever that, and then use it for the day and then come back and charge it. For me, I don't do that because my wife's car is in the garage, because the wife gets the premium spot, and my Lightning won't fit in there anyway. And I don't put it in the driveway because she leaves first in the morning. So, I typically charge mine on a Friday night when we're not going anywhere on a Saturday morning, and then I wake up with a 90%. But if I was plugging in every single day, I probably wouldn't even do 90. 90 is just convenient for me, so I only do it once a week. But it's probably even better to charge it at a lesser rate the way I drive it, and charge it, every day, or charge it, every other day or something would probably even be better for the battery health. So a lot of different ways to go about it, and none of them are wrong. It's just whatever works for you. And I think we won't know, what we don't know until, again, 5 years down the road, and we start seeing what are the differences between the cell batteries and the packs? What's the difference between the LFPs? What's the difference between the different charging methods, whether DC does help get some of the moisture out of there, or whether charging every day is the way to go? And then, then what we're going to find out in 5 or 6 years, that we're going to turn around, it's going to not matter, because there's going to be like a $5,000 replacement swap battery, and nobody's going to care.
And that's something that, there's so much evolution in this game, and we are all still technically in the early adoption phase of the EV space. And even though it's becoming more widely known, I still think that it's at the early adoption stages where we're still less than 10%. And it's that, as that grows, you're going to see a ton of opportunity and a ton of growth in the space, and battery tech, improvements and all of those things. And a Ford Lightning has never been driven over the course of 6 years and 150,000 miles. They put it in their test facilities and try to do testing, but nobody has put it in freezing cold 300 days, and then run it across the highways. And all the testing you do, real life is what's going to matter. And who knows, we could get 5 years from now, and those first people that are driving 30,000-40,000 miles a year are going to be at 300,000 miles and trucking with their vehicles. And it's, a great thing because of how it's been structured. Or you can start seeing cell failures and high expenses for replace. You don't know. But as the evolution of that game moves forward, obviously we have the variables that we know: the savings of fuel with current energy prices, the low maintenance expenses in general, which over the lifetime of the vehicle are saving greater than the cost of even the replacement battery. But that's something that a lot of those variables will yet to be determined, because we don't know what batteries are going to be like in 5 years. And we also don't know what maintenance is going to be like in 5 years. And we really don't know what these vehicles are going to be like in 5 years with how they're running with their vehicles, because it is a lot less moving parts. So at what point does the battery fail? And that's what they can run out, and they can say, they can make it speculation that we're going to get to 500,000 miles, but until people get there, we won't know. So
yeah, it's going to turn out that I was overthinking it, and it didn't matter at all.
It made a 2% difference in the life health of your battery, but you saved the 2% by having the healthy behaviors, and so that's something that shouldn't be regretted either way. But
yep, true enough.
All about lifestyle. So
yes, sir.
Well, we'll wrap up there. It's been an hour, so we tend to get long-winded, and I try to cut us off as close to an hour as we can. But just it's good logistical conversations around just generalized battery health, and obviously those couple news articles we hit. But we will try the topic that we intend on talking about soon here is going to be hydrogen, and we'll see if we can get a little bit into the hydrogen space. That's a clean energy vehicle source that not a lot of people have actually know about or talked about. but something that, we've kind of had our eye on, and that is Toyota has their eye on. And so we'll talk about that maybe next week. But then we'll also have some conversations in the near future about some more charging infrastructure. So that's it. Another week of Turn Down for What. Feel free to like us on YouTube, subscribe to us, like the video, share it with your friends. We're also on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, that is, or any other platform that you stream. So
see you guys next time.
Next week.